Hello and welcome to Inside the Americas. I'm Laura Cellier. Coming up in the programme, a year after the death of Hugo Chavez, Venezuela is torn. We'll examine how for some, Nicolas Maduro is failing to uphold the legacy of Chavismo. Plus, working to keep America on Israel's side, our Washington correspondents go behind the scenes at the annual conference for America's biggest pro-Israel lobby. And another first at the Oscars. Alfonso Cuarón becomes the first Latin American director to win an Oscar for his work on the space thriller Gravity. But first, a year ago this week, Venezuela lost its iconic leader, Hugo Chavez. His appointed heir has failed to heal the bitter divisions in Venezuelan society, and they've since spilled over into street protests and sometimes violent clashes. Well, now even the most loyal Chavistas admit Nicolas Maduro does not quite fill the shoes of his predecessor.
Hugo Chavez is still very much present in today's Venezuela, on billboards and murals across the country, and in the memory of the poor who benefited most from his left-wing programs. An aura that his successor, Nicolas Maduro, is struggling to live up to, despite following in Chavez's footsteps and mimicking his strong rhetorical style.
I think he tries to imitate him, but he can't.
But discontent is growing. Chronic shortages of basic goods, a 56% inflation rate and rampant crime have fueled protests. With Venezuela's middle classes taking to the streets, the demonstrations have often turned into violent confrontations with the police. Long queues at supermarkets existed under Chavez too, but his supporters say the late president's charisma made difficult times bearable.
It's hard to believe, but he had the talent of persuasion, and it's not the same with the president we have now.
While Maduro doesn't command the same unquestioning loyalty, many Chavistas in working-class neighborhoods say they will continue to support him, but under certain conditions.
As long as Maduro keeps on with Chavez's legacy, I think people will be happy and satisfied. If he doesn't, he won't go very far.
Some analysts, though, point to Maduro's razor-thin presidential victory last year as a sign of eroding support.
Once Chavez died, Maduro's appeal in the working-class neighborhoods is less than what Chavez had.
While protests rip through other areas of Caracas, Chavez's imposing figure still casts a long enough shadow in these working-class neighborhoods to ensure that his legacy and appointed successor can continue for now.
Israel's Prime Minister was in Washington this week, where he spoke at the annual summit of the pro-Israel lobby, AIPAC. The summit comes just a few weeks before Israelis and Palestinians are set to resume direct talks for the first time in 3 years. Philip Crowther and Yuka Royer have this report on how groups such as AIPAC are working hard to keep Americans on Israel's side.
Following his visit to the White House, Benjamin Netanyahu headed for the annual AIPAC policy conference. Some 14,000 people awaited the Israeli Prime Minister there.
Just as Israel is prepared to recognize a Palestinian state, the Palestinians must be prepared to recognize a Jewish state.
Washington's political heavyweights are also regulars at this pro-Israel convention.
This is what we do to ensure Israel...
Last year, it was the Vice President, Joe Biden. This year, Secretary of State John Kerry joined the congregation.
We will never let the West Bank turn into another Gaza. My friends,
AIPAC employs around 300 people and a whole army of lobbyists. It has around 100,000 members.
Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, and we have to support Israel through our Congress, through lobbying, to ensure that that democracy continues to flourish and grow.
The powerful group works hard to get Congress on its side.
Neighborhood and under constant threat from rockets, terrorists, and those seeking its destruction. Israel relies on its ally America in order to confront all challenges it faces.
AIPAC is by far the biggest pro-Israel lobby in the United States, but it's not the only one. This is J Street, smaller and more liberal, focused on a diplomatic resolution to the Middle East conflict.
75% of American Jews supported Barack Obama in 2008, almost as many in 2012. Yet when you look at the views of the community as they're expressed by the traditional organizations on Israel, that progressive voice simply wasn't being heard. It wasn't even being expressed. Our mission is to advocate and to mobilize and to organize for a two-state solution.
In 2013, J Street spent $400,000 on lobbying efforts. AIPAC spends more. It was $3 million last year. A recent poll on the Middle East conflict showed 64% of Americans supporting Israel and just 12% supporting the Palestinian side.
Authorities in Mexico are still revelling in what they consider a major victory in the war on drugs. Last week, they arrested Joaquín Guzmán, the world's most powerful drug lord. But there were no celebrations in the northern region of Sinaloa, where Guzmán's cartel has held sway for years. Instead, local residents took to the streets in his support. Elena Casas has more.
A protest march calling for the release of one of the world's most notorious criminals. Joaquín Guzmán, known as El Chapo, was the FBI's most wanted man. But here, he's a local hero.
He's our idol, because we trust him. But we don't trust the justice system. We want to be respected more than anything.
El Chapo was born here, the village of La Tuna, high in the Sierra Madre. In these remote mountains, many feel they owe no loyalty to the Mexican state, but they owe Guzmán their livelihoods, which often come from growing marijuana.
You have to recognize that here in the mountains, growing marijuana is people's way of life. When they can't survive just from farming, they complement it with drugs.
Local people also say El Chapo has protected them, keeping the area free of the extortion and kidnappings that plague other parts of Mexico, where rival cartels are in charge. They see him as a Robin Hood figure who helps the poor and even built paved roads. Authorities have made little effort to win over Guzmán's supporters. On Sunday, police cracked down on protesters, arresting over 200. Witnesses said security forces attacked demonstrators.
I was taking pictures of the bullet casings and 3 of them arrived and grabbed me, threw me on the floor and beat me. I resisted and identified myself as press. They kept beating me, telling me they would kill me. They handcuffed me, I resisted. They put a bag over my head and kept beating me.
Sinaloa's marijuana farmers may well find Guzmán's arrest changes little. Most here believe the capo will continue to run his organization from behind bars. Cracking down on drug trafficking is unlikely to win much support here unless local people are offered another way to make a living.
Visually stunning space adventure Gravity was the standout winner at this year's Oscars, where it picked up no less than 7 awards. The film is set in space and was mostly shot at studios in London. But Latinos are claiming this as a victory of their own, because the film's Alfonso Cuarón is the first Latin American to win a Gong for Best Director.
Man down! Man down!
It's an out-of-this-world adventure set high above the surface of the Earth. But director Alfonso Cuarón started his journey here at the film school of the National University of Mexico, and he's proud of his roots.
If I did Gravity at the end, what I've said is that this doesn't represent Mexican culture or it makes any difference for the film industry in Mexico. That doesn't mean that this is a product of a Mexican who actually developed in Mexico, and everything his way of thinking is completely influenced and dictated by that upbringing.
Teaching staff remember him as one of the most brilliant and creative students of his generation.
Inteligente, primero. Sensible.
Intelligent, sensitive and simple. I think he has kept his human spirit very much alive. This is my impression of him.
Esa es mi impresión de él, ¿no?
He's one of the students who has been the most successful. We still see him in the same way. We see him as a colleague, and in that sense it's great. It's a big achievement for him, and this achievement benefits the school a lot.
The school's talent pool doesn't end with Cuarón. Gravity's director of photography, Emmanuel Lubezki, is also an alumni. He also went home with an Oscar. The current crop of cinematography students are keen to follow in their footsteps while keeping their art form distinctly Mexican.
Cinematographers are breaking certain patterns and are betting on new narratives, a different cinema which I think makes it honest and also makes people pay attention to our country and see that we have a different cinema from the one they used to associate us with.
With a string of recent awards, Mexican cinema is enjoying a renaissance. New names such as Amat Escalante, Best Director at Cannes for Heli, and Fernando Einbeck, a runner-up at the San Sebastian Film Festival, are ensuring the next generation of Mexican filmmakers will continue to fly the flag on the international stage.
And finally, the world's biggest party has wrapped up for another year. Over the past few days, Rio de Janeiro has hosted nearly 500 street parties with tens of thousands of tourists jetting in to enjoy the traditional samba parades. Well, now the clean-up begins as Brazilians turn their attentions to the Football World Cup. That begins in a little over 3 months' time. We'll leave you with these colourful images and we'll see you at the same time next week.